Hi everyone, it's Kama again. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to share with you a very sad story, and this happened over 20 years ago, and it was the first time that I saw someone die. Now, I know that nowadays it's not so uncommon to see people die, whether it's a freak accident or a murder, motor vehicle accident, because with social media as it is now, there's just this wanton sharing, filming of crime scene, motor vehicle accidents. I've seen actual murders being committed with videos circulating with the actual murder. You see the person being shot and die. And it's almost as if we're desensitized, or we are becoming desensitized to it, because it's so often and it's so gruesome. And it's something really should be done to regulate this, because many times not even the relatives find out about it before it's circulated, and so many persons see all of this gruesome murder. But this happened at a time when I had never before seen someone actually die right in front of me, and this was a freak accident. Now, before I tell you that story, I'm going to tell you about two other instances where I saw the person when they were very shortly after they died, right? Very shortly after they died. And the first one was it was traumatic for me because it involved a toddler. Now, I remember I was at the children's hospital, and I had taken one of my children there. And while we were waiting to be seen by the doctor, I just heard this loud screaming, and this woman running in with her toddler in her arms, and she was trying to explain to the nurses what had happened. So apparently he had choked on something, and he died en route to the hospital. So she actually had his lifeless body in her arms, and she ran in with the baby, and she was just so traumatized, she just collapsed with him. And that image it stayed in my mind for so many years, because I was there with my toddler, right? And just to imagine the trauma that this lady was going through, running with your infant in your arms who had just died in your arms, coming to the hospital, having choked on something. And she had to be taken, of course, into the trauma room. They did what they had to do to calm her down, because she just lost her composure. She lost it's as if she was no longer in this world, right? And just the shrieks, the horror, I can't even describe it. And that stayed with me for a while, and I can imagine that the nurses and doctors see this every day. They see people running in every day with persons who they just cannot save. And being a children's hospital, obviously it would be children. This is happening with. So it just reminds me how these healthcare workers, how dedicated they really have to be to stay in the professions and to provide service. When they see this every day, witness this every day. And sometimes when you go and you're interacting with them, sometimes it seems as if they are callous, because you're trying to explain this is an emergency. How is it you're not rushing? You're not. It's like they are so wired with emergencies running in every minute, every day. They're not responding to it as you think they should. It's not that they don't care, but they're just so used to it. And they have been wired to see the difference between maybe a class A emergency, a class B emergency, a class C emergency. So what you think is life and death, to them might not be. Somebody else's case might be more urgent, right? So that was that case. I think that was the first time I saw a child dying there. And then a couple years after that, I remember I was downtown Kingston. I just come off the bus, and you know where the bus stop is downtown, many garrison areas are surrounding there. So many times you hear gunshots and people have to run. But I came off the bus, and this man had just been shot. I mean, like maybe less than 5 minutes before. He had just been shot and killed, and his body was there in the road. And I remember what stood out, I don't know why this stood out, but his hair was in cornrow. And, you know, the body wasn't covered yet because it just happened. And I remember saying to myself, oh my God, somebody just did his hair. I don't know why that stood out to me, because the man was there with the gunshot and blood and everything, and shoes fly off. And I mean, people going about their business because this is downtown, they're used to it. And what stood out for me was this man with his cornrows, and I'm saying, someone just did his hair. I don't know. So I guess what I was internalizing is that, look at his hair, so well done, he had no clue that just a short while later he would no longer be here. Right? So as we go through this thing called life, we are going to face death. Ultimately our own, but before then, we will have to face up to other people's deaths and how we cope. Everybody will have their way of coping. So let me tell you now about the incident, the freak accident that occurred that caused this gentleman to die right in front of me. So this was about 20 years ago. I was at home, and at the time my daughter was 4, I think, and my son was about 1. No, I was outside. I just washed the clothes and I was hanging out the clothes. Right? So, you know, I live in the tropics, so we use the sunshine to dry our clothes. We don't have to use the dryer. So I was outside pinning up the clothes on the line, and you had some men, some persons, mostly men, a couple women were there. They were from a cable company that was nearby, and they were going around putting up the wires, the cables, to the houses, because it was a fairly new company. And so they were just running their cables, right? So they had the ladders, and they would climb up to the roof and run the cables. So while I was hanging out the clothes, I just remember seeing this man running, you know, like staggering along the pathway. And I was saying, you know, I was asking myself, what happened to this man? You know, why is he staggering like that? And he was holding his neck. So shortly after that, another man came behind him, was running behind him, and I still didn't know what was happening. So then this man just came up into my yard. He just staggered up into my yard, and I remember him saying to me, he said, help me please, I'm dying. And I was just so shocked, I didn't know what to do, because I didn't have a clue what was happening, but he was holding his neck. But as soon as he said that, he turned away from me, and he staggered back down the pathway, and then he went into the swale, which is a little area just in front of the yard. He went into the swale, and he collapsed. And when he collapsed, the other man who was working with him, because I later realized that they were from the cable company and they had been putting up the cables. So what had happened was, he was coming back down on the ladder, and he slipped and he fell, but he fell on some metal spikes that were part of the decoration for the gate of the house that he was working on, which was about 2 houses from my house. So when he slipped, he fell on those spikes, and the steel went up into his neck, right? So eventually what had happened was he drowned in his own blood, because he burst the artery or vein, I don't remember which. So the other man went down to him, and a lady went down to him, and they were there, trying to communicate with him and telling him, don't worry, the van is coming, the van is coming. By that time, though, I think he had already died because he wasn't moving. He had peed himself. I remember seeing, his jeans pants was soaked. He had peed himself with all the trauma that he was going through. And the other gentleman eventually just collapsed down on the pavement. It's like he realized that his friend had died, and he just collapsed and he started crying. He just started bawling, and the woman started screaming. And then, my children, they were just, because I think they were outside as well, and they were wondering what's happening. I'm there wondering what's happening. So eventually they took him up, and they took him away in the van. So later on, I found out that yes, he had died, and he had fallen. It was a freak accident. The ladder slipped and he fell. So I was there now. This happened right in front of me, right in front of my home. There was blood all over the yard, all over the swale. And I was so terrified because I was saying, oh my God, what, because I went for the hose and I washed away the blood. And it took me a while to really process what had happened. It took me a while because it's the first time I'd ever seen someone die. This person was alive and came up to me and said, help me please, I'm dying. And within a very short while after, he was no more. He was no more. And then there was I washing away his blood. Right, so that has stayed with me through the years. It's just something we have to face. Death is a part of life, and it sometimes happens very suddenly. Now I remember after that, many persons in the community started getting their saw and cutting off the spikes, because a lot of houses, a lot of yards had the spikes on the gates, as part of the decoration, as well as to prevent persons from coming and sitting on the gates. It was a deterrent. And I remember seeing a lot of persons started sawing them off. It's like they're saying, oh my God, this car. Whenever something a freak accident or some tragedy happens, and you're saying never again. But the fact is, you just don't know. You don't expect something like that to happen, and you just can't prevent it from happening, really. You can try, but do you know which angle the other one is coming from? Right? So, yeah, so I wanted to share that story with you. It's something that I've carried with me because it was a deep experience. It was a deep experience. I was pretty young, and it touched me. So I'm sharing. As usual, I'm full of stories. So stay tuned for the next one. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and please like my video, and I'll see you next time.